Hey people, what's up? My name is Juan. I am just one reader. I am here with my April wrap up. Today is April 28th, so we still have a couple days left in April, but the book that I am currently reading is very long. It is 600 pages long, and there's no way in hell that I will be able to finish it by the end of the month, so I'm not including it here. However, I did read 5 books in April, which is not a lot, especially considering that my TBR for April was incredibly ambitious. It was a very big, very hefty TBR, and I only managed 5 books. But it wasn't completely unsuccessful. It was quite a good month, all things considered. I read 5 things, and there was only 1 book that I really didn't like, but the other 4 were very good, especially the first 2. So, I think I have mentioned all of these books in recent reads episodes. So if you want to hear more details and more of my thoughts on these books, go ahead and watch my recent reads wrap-ups. In here, I will try to mention them as succinctly and as synthetically as possible. So I will be talking about these 5 books: The Phantom Tollbooth by Norton Juster, Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte, God is Not Great, How Religion Poisons Everything by Christopher Hitchens, St. Lucy's Home for Girls Raised by Wolves by Karen Russell, and As I Lay Dying by William Faulkner. So, let's start at the very beginning. A very good place to start. The Phantom Tollbooth by Norton Juster is my favorite book of the year so far, and I am pretty confident that this will be my favorite book of the year come December. I really don't think that I can be as affected and as I don't think I can get another experience in 2018 such as this one. This really had it all. It really had everything, and I never thought I would like it as much as I did. I kind of thought, well, this is a very popular, very hyped book. It is children's fiction. It is super American. Maybe I won't get it, you know, and it turned out to be my favorite thing that I have read so far this year. It is such a wild, clever, incredibly clever and hilarious story. It plays with language. I think this will appeal to people who really enjoy Neil Gaiman, because, you know, Neil Gaiman is another author who really plays with the language and with the structure, and he's just kind of wacky, and I think Norton Juster does the same thing. Of course, Norton Juster is the classic. I mean, Neil Gaiman came after Norton Juster, but I had never read this, and I have read a lot of Neil Gaiman, so coming into this, having read Neil Gaiman really impressed me and really helped me to appreciate and it also having those kind of Neil Gaiman type of experiences really helped me resonate with this book. So yeah, I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. Just look at me. I am speechless. I am literally speechless because I loved this book so much. Every chapter was a complete wonder. It was like, it was entertaining and funny and mind-blowing at the same time. I adored it. By the way, if you have read this and if you love this, I highly recommend that you read, oh, what's it called? It's another children's, it's very similar. It's a very popular novel, and it is actually Neil Gaiman's favorite book. I think it is The 13 Clocks. It's another children's classic that I read like a couple years ago, and it is very similar. It is very playful and very funny. But yeah, The Phantom Tollbooth, 5 stars. Then I picked up Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars, but it's a very solid, very high 4. To me, this book was a great introduction to classics. It showed me that reading classics can be just as fun as reading a contemporary thriller with a lot of suspense, or any kind of novel that is more contemporary. At first, yes, I'm not gonna lie, yes, at first there was a little bit of a barrier for me in terms of the language felt a little bit classic and a little bit like almost ancient, and I was kind of I had to get familiar with the writing, with the use of language. Also, there were times in which I felt that it was a little bit slow and a little bit too detailed for me. So there was a little bit of frustration at first, but once I really got on with the story and once everything got started, I mean, shit went down, and I was really impressed, not just with the book as a book, but I was also impressed with me by how much I enjoyed it and how much I loved it and how quickly I read it. It was really, really great. And if you are someone like me who doesn't read a lot of classics, but someone who is looking forward to finding classics that are easy to read and that will just completely sweep you off your feet, this is a very good one, I think. The next book that I read was also very, very, very good. God is Not Great: How Religion Poisons Everything by Christopher Hitchens, a really illuminating, enriching nonfiction book about atheism and why essentially religion is not a good thing and why it should not exist today. It technically, like in an ideal scenario. I think this is a book meant for atheists exclusively because it kind of deals with the topic of religion very aggressively and very sharply, and the author is unapologetically cynical and sarcastic, and he doesn't really care what you think. He will tell you what he thinks exactly the way that he thinks it, and I loved that about it. I personally loved it because I completely identify with everything that he mentions in here. I completely agree with him on everything that he mentions about religion and why it causes more evil than it causes good. That's just a personal belief, I guess. But yeah, I think this is more targeted more for atheists. I think if you do have any kind of religious belief, even if it's not a very hard belief, I think you will find this kind of aggressive because it is really aggressive. But I think this topic should be I think this is a book that a lot of people would benefit from reading. I would have loved if this kind of material had been available at school. But of course, I mean, I studied at a very religious school, so of course there was no questioning of things. But yeah, really enjoyed this. It is very funny, and I really liked the author's voice. So I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. Then I read the short story collection St. Lucy's Home for Girls Raised by Wolves by Karen Russell. And you know, as it is with any other short story collection out there, it is very tough to review or appreciate the book as a whole, as a unit. In the end, I gave this book 3.75, almost a 4 out of 5. I did find that there were a lot of really great stories, but there were some others that were a little bit of a disappointment. But yeah, I mean, Karen Russell is just a tremendous writer. She is really, really good at creating this magical, but not exactly completely magical scenarios, places, and people and words. She is very good at magical realism because the kind of impossible, implausible things that happen in these stories are not completely impossible. I mean, if you really think about them, they are dealt with, the material in here is dealt with as realistically as possible. So yeah, I enjoyed it, but I think there are better short story collections around the same topics out there. But it was good. It was good. And the last book that I finished in April was a book that I really, really didn't like, As I Lay Dying by William Faulkner. I don't even know how to talk about this book because I really think I didn't get it, honestly. I mean, this is a book that I feel it's very unfair of me to say that I really, really, really didn't like this book. I gave it 1 star, not 2, 1 star, which means it's a very, very negative review for me because I had a very, very negative experience reading it. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't appreciate this book because it is, well, it is a modern classic. I wanted to like it. I wanted to really love it. But this book really makes it very hard for the reader. I felt very similarly to when I read A Brief History of Seven Killings by Marlon James, which is another book that is very popular, very well liked, and very acclaimed. It actually won the Man Booker Prize, and I detested it. Well, I feel pretty much the same way about As I Lay Dying. I know that this is an important book. I know that it is a beautiful book. I know that it is a great classic, blah, 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 blah. But personally, for me, I hated it. I hated the writing. I hated the way that it was incomprehensible. I hated that I never knew what was happening because it is stream of conscious. It's a stream of consciousness kind of writing style, which I usually like, but I didn't like it in here. It felt very distant. I never felt like I understood what was happening with the characters or in the story. I will say though that the tiny things that I actually got, like, they were so beautiful and so poignant. I particularly remember this scene of the character of the mother in the book dying and looking through a window as she was dying, and what she was looking at through the window was her son building her coffin. And it's such a wonderful image. It's such a wonderful thing that is completely stuck in my mind. So William Faulkner must be really great because he really affected me by, you know, the little things that I actually got. But overall, it was just not for me. And even though I can appreciate it on an intellectual level, and on a literary level, I hated it. I'm not going to read any more William Faulkner because it's just not for me. I mean, it all comes down to that. It's not for me, and if it's not for you, then what are you doing, right? So I gave it 1 star, and I know that a lot of people are going to disagree, but that's what BookTube is for. It's for disagreeing as well. And those are all the books that I actually completed. Now, the book that I am currently reading right now is probably going to take me at least a week because it is very long, but it is very readable. It's very, very easy to read. It's super fun. It's very accessible, and I'm finding it really immersive. And it is A Prayer for Owen Meany by John Irving. I am like 10 pages in. I just started it this week. And I am finding it really, really readable and immersive, and I am really liking it. So I'm hoping I can finish this in a week. So guys, that was my April. It was pretty good. I mean, it could have been more successful, but it was pretty good. Let me know in the comments down below what you think about these books. Please disagree and make life hard for me. And also tell me about your April. How was your April? What was your favorite or least favorite book that you read in April? Thank you for watching. I am Just One Reader, and I will see you next time.